Is it important for a Bocher to walk around in a hat and jacket?
This question I've been asked many, many times, and I think there are two aspects to the question. I think there is the halachic aspect to the question, which primarily is related to davening with a hat and jacket, and then there's the more general the idea of a Jewish way of dress, which is not necessarily halachic per se. So to briefly touch on the question from a halachic perspective, the idea of wearing a hat and jacket is not something brought explicitly in halacha per se. The Mishnah Berurah does touch upon it, that based on a certain way of dress that people had in those days, that was a sign of respect. The Gemara tells us that there's an obligation when a person davens, to be dressed properly, respectfully, the way you'll dress in front of a person of authority, a person of prestige. How much more so you should dress yourself up respectfully. The exact mode of dress would depend based on the minik HaMedina, based on the custom of where a person lives. That's when Shulchan Aruch you have a discussion whether a person has to wear socks when they daven or not, because it has to do with what's the minig and what's considered the respectful thing to do in the given place and time. But it has become the halachic standard, so to speak, that a hat and jacket, the hat represents the fact that a person's supposed to wear two coverings when they daven, either way. So whether it has to be the hat that you wear like a borsalino, or it could be a different type of hat, the point is that there is a halachic requirement to have two coverings. The jacket is a representative of where a person shows himself respectfully. A person won't go to a business meeting wearing their shorts and a loud shirt. There's a certain respectful element. So that has been sort of the traditional mode of davening, whether one feels that they feel more comfortable not wearing those types of clothing. I guess that will leave room for one to develop their close attachment to why this is important and feel a sense of importance to this way of dressing. And maybe once a person feels close to that way or appreciates that way of dressing, they'll appreciate more and do more in that realm. But in terms of halacha, that's where this, so to speak, is where the halacha deals with this question. When it comes to the more general hashkafa question about Jewish dress and the concept of us standing out, or especially in the realm of Chabad Chassidus and the concept of wearing a hat and jacket on the street and going on Mivtzoyim and wearing a hat and jacket even when it's very hot, or more just in general, the fact that there is in the cheder, in the yeshiva systems, there's an expectation that a Bocher walks around with a hat and jacket on the street. So this obviously is, as the concept has been explained, it represents the idea of a soldier. This idea actually became very real to me. A number of years ago, I was walking down the street and I noticed that there was an American soldier, and the American soldier was wearing his uniform. And it dawned on me at that moment that it was quite odd. Obviously the soldier wasn't at base, he wasn't active because he was on a random street in a neighborhood that didn't have any army bases as far as I knew, yet he still identified himself with the uniform. Now, could be because that was just the circumstances of where he was coming to going, but the point is that it definitely triggers, not so much within other people, as it did with me in that case, but even within a person themselves. As the Gemara tells us, Rabbi Yochanan called his clothing his honor. That's why on Shabbos a person has to change their clothing. Likewise, the Gemara tells us that if a person is in a very tempted state and they may sin, they should change their clothing. Clothing defines the person. And whether we like it or not, clothing creates an identity. Teenagers especially, where they find clothing as a way of identifying themselves. They'll walk on the street with a loud shirt to gain an attraction, to get a validation, to be part of a certain group of people. So in essence, the clothing are a means of expression, self-expression. Now when a person is wearing a white button-down shirt, black pants, hat and jacket, it creates an ambiance for the person himself. The person now feels connected to this as being something that is who I am and the identity of who they are, versus wearing blue jeans and a loud shirt. That isn't to say the person who wears the blue jeans and loud shirt isn't from or Hasidish or is not a Shemer Torah mitzvahs, but obviously the person at this point is not yet comfortable enough and doesn't want to identify themselves with being the white shirt, black pants, hat and jacket person. So where does the idea of a hat and jacket come into place? It comes into place as a sense of where do I identify myself as? Who do I think myself? Who do I think myself of? How do I think of myself? Am I a person that is, worldly, open-minded, so to speak, just looking to be accepted by all, which would be represented by the way you dress or lack thereof, perhaps? Or on the contrary, you see yourself as having a mission, seeing yourself as being part of a certain group of focusing in a certain path of direction of where you're headed in life. When I walk on the street and I'm wearing a hat and jacket, I'm conscious of the fact that I'm representing something and therefore I have to behave a certain way. And if I don't wear the hat and jacket, I feel differently. I feel a certain sense of like, I'm not necessarily now focused on my mission. So the hat and jacket has become somewhat of a struggle by many because precisely it has this identity attached to it. Would I say someone who doesn't wear the hat and jacket is doing something wrong? I wouldn't. I would just say that the person has not yet identified their purpose and meaning in life. And they still want to venture off on different avenues to experience and explore other places and therefore want to feel comfortable. Some people started off wearing the hat and jacket and they felt uncomfortable with themselves and they wanted to be part of other groups and other types of, travel down different avenues, and therefore there came a necessity to let go of the hat and jacket. So again, the hat and jacket is a symbol representative of the person's self-identity. When the person senses that they're connected to something and feels the meaning and the drive and the passion of the identity of themselves, that's where the hat and jacket comes in. If a person is not holding on that level, a person has to take stock of why. Where do they find themselves currently, and why is it that their identity right now is not with the hat and jacket, but rather with other things?